Excessive kindness may seem virtuous, but it can quickly lead to personal imbalance. Stoicism teaches us that true strength lies in rationality and emotional control, not in overgiving. Being overly kind to others without considering your limits can drain your energy and hinder your growth. This article will uncover the hidden risks of excess kindness, backed by Stoic principles, and explain how to avoid these traps for a healthier, balanced life. Lack of boundaries. Why being too nice leads to being taken advantage of. As we continue exploring the hidden dangers of excessive kindness, one of the most common pitfalls is the lack of boundaries. When we constantly prioritize others' needs over our own, we inadvertently open the door for others to take advantage of our generosity. The Stoic philosophy teaches us the importance of maintaining healthy boundaries, not just for our peace of mind but for our personal integrity. Without clear limits, our kindness can quickly turn into a tool for manipulation and exploitation. Imagine the story of Sarah, a successful professional who spent years being the go-to person for everyone in her life, whether it was at work, with friends, or within her family. Sarah prided herself on always being there for others, offering a listening ear, advice, or help with even the smallest tasks. But over time, Sarah began to feel exhausted, constantly drained by the demands of others. Her friends would ask for favors without hesitation, and at work, she was expected to shoulder more responsibility than was fair. The pressure mounted, yet she found it hard to say no. It wasn't until one day, after helping a friend for the third time in a week, that Sarah realized she was overwhelmed. She hadn't taken time for herself, her work was suffering, and she felt increasingly resentful. But the problem wasn't the kindness itself, it was the lack of boundaries. Sarah had not learned to recognize when her kindness was being taken advantage of and, in turn, allowed herself to be used. This is where Stoicism can provide valuable insight. The Stoics believed that we should only give what we can afford to give, emotionally, mentally, and physically. They taught that we have control over our actions and should never allow others to impose on us. Without boundaries, we open ourselves up to being overwhelmed and manipulated, often without even realizing it. In Sarah's case, her constant willingness to help others without limit was not only harming her but preventing others from developing their own independence. Setting boundaries doesn't mean becoming cold or unkind. It means recognizing your own worth and taking care of your own needs first. It's about being able to say no without guilt, understanding that self-care is vital to being able to help others in the long term. A Stoic would remind us that we are not obligated to meet every need that comes our way, especially when it comes at the cost of our own well-being. In the end, the lack of boundaries is one of the most subtle yet damaging effects of excessive kindness. By maintaining healthy limits, we not only protect ourselves but also create more genuine, meaningful relationships based on mutual respect. So, the next time you're about to overextend yourself for someone, remember that kindness should never come at the expense of your own peace or boundaries. Self-neglect. How excessive kindness can harm your own needs. Building on the idea that excessive kindness without boundaries leads to being taken advantage of, another dangerous outcome of overgiving is self-neglect. When we are constantly focused on fulfilling the needs of others, we often forget to tend to our own well-being, leaving ourselves emotionally, mentally, and physically drained. Stoicism teaches us that in order to truly help others, we must first take care of ourselves. Without this balance, we risk burning out and losing touch with our own needs and desires. Take the story of John, a kind-hearted man who always put others first. He volunteered at his local community center, helped friends and family without hesitation, and went out of his way to make sure everyone around him was taken care of. But despite his endless acts of kindness, John was neglecting his own needs. He hadn't taken a vacation in years, his health was deteriorating due to stress, and his own emotional well-being had been overlooked. He felt unappreciated and exhausted but believed that his kindness would eventually be recognized. Yet, he continued to give without thinking about how it impacted him. One day, John had an emotional breakdown. He was overwhelmed by the realization that, despite all his efforts, he felt empty and unfulfilled. His life revolved around helping others, but he had neglected the most important person, himself. In that moment, John understood that his excessive kindness was not only harming his physical health but his emotional state as well. He had been so focused on fulfilling others' needs that he had forgotten to nurture his own soul. This is where Stoicism offers us a valuable lesson. The Stoics believed that a wise person knows their limits and makes self-care a priority. It's not selfish to focus on yourself, it's necessary. Stoic teachings remind us that to live virtuously, we must have a healthy mind and body, as this is the foundation upon which we can contribute to the well-being of others. If we ignore our own needs, we risk becoming empty vessels, unable to offer genuine kindness or support. For John, the first step to healing was acknowledging that he needed to take time for himself. He began to set aside moments for relaxation, reconnected with hobbies that brought him joy, and started prioritizing his health. Slowly, he started to find balance. His relationships became more meaningful because he was no longer operating from a place of exhaustion. By nurturing his own well-being, John was able to offer true kindness without feeling depleted. In the end, self-neglect is one of the hidden costs of excessive kindness. By ensuring we are emotionally, physically, and mentally well, we can become more effective and authentic in our kindness. Remember, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's essential to living a balanced, fulfilling life. Only when we put our own needs first can we truly offer the best version of ourselves to the world around us. Compromising your values. When pleasing others contradicts your true beliefs, continuing from the theme of self-neglect, another subtle danger of excessive kindness is compromising your core values. When we go to great lengths to please others, we often find ourselves bending our principles to meet their expectations. This conflict between kindness and personal integrity can lead to a loss of identity and inner peace. The Stoic approach to life teaches us that we must remain steadfast in our beliefs, even when faced with the temptation to please others at the expense of our values. Take Sarah's story, for example. She had always been the supportive friend, the one who would go out of her way to make everyone happy. Her friends knew they could count on her, and she loved to be there for them. However, over time, Sarah began to notice that some of her friends were asking her to do things that didn't align with her values. They wanted her to gossip about others, make excuses for their bad behavior, or even support decisions she didn't agree with. Sarah, eager to maintain her image as the nice person, would go along with it, convincing herself that keeping the peace was more important than standing firm in her beliefs. It wasn't until Sarah found herself in a situation where her actions directly conflicted with her morals that she realized how far she had strayed. She had helped a friend cover up a lie, telling herself that it was just a small favor, but deep down, she knew it was wrong. In that moment, Sarah felt a deep sense of guilt and discomfort. She had allowed her desire to please others to overshadow her own integrity. This compromise not only affected her relationship with her values, but also left her feeling disconnected from herself. This is where Stoicism offers profound wisdom. The Stoics believed in acting according to virtue, which means staying true to our values and beliefs no matter the external pressure. A Stoic would argue that seeking approval at the cost of our principles only leads to internal conflict and dissatisfaction. In fact, true kindness comes from a place of honesty and authenticity. When we compromise our values to please others, we are no longer offering genuine kindness. We are simply trying to maintain an image or avoid conflict. Sarah's realization was a turning point. She began to practice the art of saying no when something didn't align with her values. She started setting clearer boundaries with her friends and prioritizing her own integrity. Over time, Sarah found that her relationships became stronger and more authentic. By being true to herself, she attracted people who respected her for who she truly was, rather than for her willingness to please at all costs. In the end, compromising your values is one of the most dangerous effects of excessive kindness. By staying true to your principles, you not only maintain your own self-respect but also foster relationships based on genuine connection rather than superficial approval. Kindness should always be rooted in authenticity, and by protecting your values, you create a life that aligns with who you truly are. Emotional exhaustion. The toll of always being the giver. Building on the idea that compromising your values can lead to internal conflict, we now look at the emotional exhaustion that often accompanies excessive kindness. Constantly putting others first, going out of your way to help, and saying yes when you really need a break can slowly drain your emotional reserves. Over time, this relentless giving without replenishing your own emotional energy can leave you feeling completely exhausted, both mentally and physically. Stoicism teaches us the importance of moderation and the risk of burnout when we neglect our own needs in favor of others. Consider the story of Mia, a dedicated mother and wife who always put her family's needs before her own. She was the first to volunteer at school events, the one to stay up late helping her children with homework, and the partner who never said no to extra chores. For years, Mia found joy in giving and taking care of those around her, but gradually, she noticed a shift. What used to feel rewarding became a heavy burden. Mia was constantly tired, irritable, and emotionally drained. She would go through the motions of being a good wife and mother, but the joy she once felt was gone. She began to feel overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility and started questioning if her kindness was truly appreciated. One evening, after another long day of taking care of everyone but herself, Mia snapped. She broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the exhaustion of constantly giving without receiving anything in return. In that moment, she realized that by always being the giver, she had neglected her own emotional health. Her kindness had come at the cost of her happiness, and she couldn't continue this way without consequences. Mia had been so caught up in meeting others' needs that she forgot the most important person in her life, herself. This is where the wisdom of Stoicism can be a game changer. Stoic philosophy teaches us that emotional resilience and self-care are just as important as helping others. The Stoics believe that in order to maintain harmony in life, one must cultivate a balanced approach to emotions, not allowing external demands to deplete us. By focusing on moderation and practicing self-care, we can give to others without losing our sense of self. The Stoics didn't advocate for coldness or selfishness, but for the idea that to help others effectively, we must first ensure we are emotionally healthy. For Mia, the solution lay in setting clearer boundaries. She started saying no when she needed rest and began prioritizing self-care, whether that meant taking time for herself or seeking support from her loved ones. Slowly, she regained her emotional energy and found a sense of balance. Her relationships became more fulfilling because she was no longer giving from an empty cup. In the end, emotional exhaustion is one of the most detrimental effects of excessive kindness. By recognizing the importance of taking care of ourselves, we can continue to offer meaningful kindness without losing our own vitality. Stoicism teaches us that to live a virtuous life, we must maintain our emotional well-being, ensuring that we are not only giving love but also receiving it, both from ourselves and others. Loss of authenticity. How overgiving makes you lose yourself. Building on the idea of emotional exhaustion and the toll of always being the giver, another consequence of excessive kindness is the loss of authenticity. When we continuously put others' needs above our own, we can slowly start to lose sight of who we really are. Over time, we begin to mold ourselves into what we think others want us to be, at the cost of our true identity. Stoicism teaches us the importance of living authentically and embracing who we truly are, without the need to constantly please others. Let me share the story of Emma, a woman who had always been known for her generosity and willingness to help. For years, she had prided herself on being the go-to person for everyone in her life. Whether it was friends, family, or co-workers, Emma was always there, offering support, time, and resources without hesitation. But over the years, Emma noticed a shift within herself. She began to lose track of what she actually wanted, what made her happy, and what her true passions were. She was constantly saying yes to everyone else's needs and requests, but no one ever seemed to check in on her. One day, after yet another long conversation where she agreed to help a friend with something she didn't really want to do, Emma felt a pang of discomfort. It wasn't that she didn't care about her friend, but she realized she hadn't made a decision for herself in weeks. Her life had become a series of obligations and tasks that weren't aligned with her personal values or desires. She started feeling like a shell of herself, someone who was always giving but never truly living. This sense of lost identity is one of the key pitfalls of excessive kindness. Stoicism teaches us that in order to live a fulfilling life, we must know ourselves deeply and act in accordance with our own values. By focusing on the needs of others without taking time for introspection, we risk becoming people-pleasers, unable to recognize our own desires or passions. Over time, we can lose touch with what truly makes us happy, as we're too busy trying to meet the expectations of others. For Emma, this realization was the wake-up call she needed. She took a step back and started to reflect on what she actually wanted from her life. She asked herself difficult questions. What are my true passions? What makes me feel alive? Slowly, Emma started to reclaim her authenticity. She began saying no to things that didn't align with her true self, and she started making space for activities and relationships that brought her joy. As she became more authentic, she found herself reconnected with a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment. The key takeaway here is that overgiving can lead us to lose touch with who we really are. If we constantly prioritize others, we risk losing ourselves in the process. Stoicism encourages us to maintain our authenticity and live in harmony with our values. By doing so, we can continue to give to others, but without sacrificing our true selves in the process. Authenticity is the foundation for genuine relationships and a fulfilling life, one that doesn't require us to lose who we are in order to please others. Damaged relationships. How excessive kindness can backfire. Building upon the loss of authenticity, another alarming consequence of being overly kind is the toll it can take on your relationships. While kindness is generally seen as a virtue, there's a tipping point where too much of it can actually lead to damaged connections. This often happens when our excessive giving becomes unbalanced, or when people start to take advantage of our generosity. In the end, what begins as an attempt to strengthen bonds can unintentionally push people away or cause resentment. Take the story of Tom, for example. Tom had always prided himself on being the good guy in his friendship circle. He was always there when someone needed help, whether it was giving financial support, offering advice, or taking on extra work for his colleagues. He believed that by always being available, he would create lasting, meaningful connections. But as time went on, Tom noticed that people stopped appreciating his efforts. Instead of gratitude, he was met with indifference or, worse, people expecting him to constantly be the one to fix everything. One day, Tom was faced with a situation where he needed help himself. Feeling burnt out and overwhelmed, he reached out to a close friend for support. But his friend was too busy with their own life, and Tom realized that his willingness to always be the one to give had led to a one-sided relationship. His friend had come to see him as a resource, not as an equal partner in a relationship. Tom felt deeply hurt and betrayed. His excessive kindness had created an imbalance, and now, instead of feeling appreciated, he felt used. This story highlights one of the most damaging effects of excessive kindness: the breakdown of genuine relationships. When we give too much without setting boundaries, we inadvertently train people to expect things from us without giving anything in return. Over time, this creates resentment, both in ourselves and in the other person. Stoicism teaches us the importance of balance, being kind and generous, but also knowing when to say no and when to prioritize our own well-being. Giving should come from a place of mutual respect, not obligation. Tom learned this lesson the hard way. He started setting boundaries with his friends and coworkers, explaining that he couldn't always be the one to take on everyone else's problems. It wasn't about being selfish, it was about taking care of himself and protecting his relationships from becoming unbalanced. Slowly, Tom began to notice a change. His relationships became healthier because he wasn't constantly overextending himself. People respected his boundaries, and he began to feel more valued as a person rather than just a source of help. The takeaway from this is clear: excessive kindness can often damage the very relationships we're trying to nurture. By learning to set boundaries and prioritize our own needs, we can cultivate more authentic, balanced relationships. Stoicism teaches us that true generosity doesn't come from endless sacrifice, but from a place of strength, respect, and mutual care. By giving with wisdom and knowing when to say no, we can create connections that are built on genuine respect and appreciation, relationships that will last and enrich our lives. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us, and we absolutely love hearing your thoughts and opinions. What are your experiences with kindness? Have you ever felt like it backfired? Drop a comment below. We'd love to know. Speech balloon sparkles, and hey, don't stop here. Be sure to check out our other videos for more thought-provoking content. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we have in store next. Stay connected and let's keep this amazing journey going. Sparkling heart.